Welcome back, everyone. We are here now for the final sessions of the day. And as per usual, we do keep the best for last. Also because these are a little bit more accessible conversations, so you don't need to have a background in quantum physics, which is what I felt like yesterday. I even got an email afterwards saying my mental capacity was exhausted, so I had to lie down for 20 minutes. So I think we did something well. So now we will dig deeper into actually what is leadership, what is values, in this very difficult environment when we see GFANZ, so the Glasgow Alliance for Net Zero, people leaving, people deleting climate, deleting the diversity, equity, inclusion, etc. And then we hear today in the morning saying, oh, but don't worry. We're just green hushing or hushing in general, but we're still doing the work. Well, how does that come across to the general population or even the business community when every year you change essentially the coat that you're wearing? So then the question is, what are the values? What is it based on, etc.? I have multiple friends who work in very large international companies, and they have been outraged to see that climate or diversity all of a sudden is deleted. Even though last year you still have the recording where the CEO says that, you know, this is our key value. So interesting things to explore. So that brings me to the kickoff session. I have the great pleasure to welcome to the stage Dimitrios Mazarakis. He's a Warsaw-based expert. He spent long years in the insurance sector. We met at the very first CE Sustainable Finance Summit. And I thought, who is this positive, lovely person? Back then, people weren't that happy that the summit was happening, and yeah, variety of things. So thank you very much for coming to join us.
Pleasure to be here.
And we also have Helena Zavazalova. She's actually one of our board members and an early supporter of ISFC. We met in 2018 when we did a very strange energy panel. And in the audience, we had 2 dogs and around 20 people. So, you know, as good as a panel can get. And last but not least, we have Anna Pidgorna. She's a board member at UNIQA, one of our partners, one of the companies we work with closely, and we're very inspired to see how UNIQA is dealing with leadership, with values, and especially how they're trying to work very hard on sustainability. So welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Linda, for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation, and I think on behalf of all of us, we'd like to extend our thanks to the fantastic ISFC team and the stellar work in putting this event together. It's been a lot to think about, a lot of value to take from the last day and a half, and I'm confident that we here will add to that with 2 fantastic experts in Helena and Ganna here today. So, to get us started, I wanted to bring a reminder of what role the insurance industry has in this entire landscape. And the insurance industry fundamentally contributes to the economy and to the society in 3 ways. One, in being its own company, right? And by that means that it brings value to the shareholders, it fulfills a function in society, but also it's a large employer in every country that a company is active in. The second element is as an investor. So if you look at EIOPA's recent report, it tells us that insurance companies are active in the European Economic Area, currently hold about 8.5 trillion euros in assets under management. And that is larger than the GDP of Germany and France put together, to give a perspective. So it's an important investor, this industry, in our society, and that's the second way it contributes. And the third way is, of course, as an underwriter and a risk taker, which is the core function of an insurance company. What that means in practice, it means that an insurance company takes risk away from individuals so that they can get on with their lives, knowing that there is a safety net there. When something goes wrong, when there's a bad event in their life, they lose their job or they have ill health or something of that sort. And also takes risk away from businesses so that businesses can rest safe knowing that a portion of the risk is with another part of the economy, and they can take calculated risks, they can invest, they can grow, and they can progress. And the important element of that is that all of these 3 roles have a value to add in the transformation towards net zero in the societal and environmental transformation. Now, two elements that are important in the way insurance companies operate. The first one is they have a very, very broad reach. There's barely a segment of society or business that insurance companies do not touch, from an individual to small, medium enterprises, large enterprises, multinationals, any sector you name. So insurance gets everywhere. And the second is, quite particular to this lovely industry of ours, that we relate to customers in their hour of need. And that is something that not many industries can say. So we support them in the times that they are difficult for them, when there is an accident, when there is a, when there is a flood, when there's a business interruption, and the like. So also very strong bond with the customer. So with this in mind, with the changing landscape that Linda and Helena this morning as well mentioned, changing priorities, I'd like to go to Ganna for the first question. In these turbulent times, with all of these conflicting priorities, how do insurance companies maintain consistency in their values, and what is the challenge that leadership is facing?
Thank you, Dimitrios, also for introducing the industry so greatly. Yeah? So it's really sitting here proud and happy to be with you today, and happy to see so many people. And even I have 6 people, like hopefully 7, cheering for me today. Yes, from the company, also coming from Austria and Czech Republic, Slovakia, and that's a real support. I believe that it's interesting that the very nature of insurance, as you said, it's based in values. And if we look back to the mother company of UNIQA, which started in 1811, you can imagine, 1811, that was the need of people to really somehow face the challenges of life. And at that time it was clear nobody can do it alone. So the very values of community, support, endurance, being there, belonging, this is the nature of insurance. And it's from that time until today, bringing this peace of mind, but also real support when something happens. And interestingly enough, the industry is based on trust. However, we are also facing this challenge or leadership challenge of trust. How to, especially in our region, yeah, where if you look how developed recently our life, yeah, and how many national catastrophes are here, you know, like recently the floods, before in Slovakia there was an earthquake, and a year before even tornado in Brno, yeah, so it's every year, it's not now, it's really in our life every year, but you will be surprised, only 37% of 37% of households in Czechia and around 50% of households in Slovakia are not insured. And many households who are insured are underinsured. So that's for me a sign that, okay, do we have, of course there are some economic things around it, but still it's a question of trust, how we as insurer are clear what value we bring to our clients and in general to society. That's why for us it's really important that we not only do this, but we also communicate about it, educate the clients about what is important, why, and recently also we've created, even based on our capabilities, risk engineering, risk management, underwriting we have in the company, we've created a new like business unit which is supporting small and medium businesses in building their resilience. So for me that's important that we communicate about the importance of being insured and about the value that the industry can bring. And maybe I will give one short example. I think that's also important to see, because of course you can, when something like crisis happens, you can sit, wait when claims come, and you can be different, be proactive, and really live your values. And the recent example of Boris crisis really showed how we can unite, and as a company, as a community of people who really care, we can do things differently. So like every day we had in the morning all the people collected from different functions and telling what we do, how we can change. And for example, on communication level, we started communicating to our clients days before, how they can prepare, what to do, what not to do, how they can provide a claim. We started taking claims not only online, but but by phone as well. We were working with them very quickly so that people can get their money quite quick. And what's also interesting that during such situations we are providing also support, mental support to people, understanding that it's a difficult situation they are in. So we have we are partnering with lines that support people in this situation as well. So I think this is an example, and what surprises me in it, how people react, like employees react to it. In this moment they say, oh, I'm so happy I'm with this company. I'm so happy that this is the mission of the company to support in this difficult situation. And I'm proud to see that the company walking the talk. So it creates a why, it creates a purpose for people also to see how we can react based on our values.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this, and it's all about bringing it to life through the actions of the company per se. And going to the Czech market for a minute, and I'd like to bring Helena into the conversation by asking, what changes you've observed in the Czech market in recent times, and also I know that you've got a good case study here to tell us about when it comes to an initiative of CHAP, the Czech Insurance Association.
Thank you, Dimitri, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. What Linda said before, we've already experiencing it, like green is not in fashion this year, right? Environment is now out of the podium, and yeah, it's still in fashion, but so this is what we hear, and it's, of course, it's a pity, and it's wrong, because look at what's happening. You just mentioned the floods. And every time a major NatCat incident or like a major extreme weather event occurs, then it just reminds us that it's still here with us and it's not going anywhere, no matter what they say in the US or anywhere else. So what's changed, I think people start slowly realizing that something's happening, they don't like it, they don't want to call it climate change maybe, but they are starting to realize that they're going to have to be better protected, and I know it's the buzzword, sorry, but more resilient, and I'll be back when I say that, why I said that, but so this is what we see on the one side, but what's also changing in the insurance companies, and I'm really happy to be able to say this, it's been 5 years that I'm at the association now. I think that insurance companies are really now trying to be of a better value to their customers, not just to throw money at them when something happens, but really let them through the process, help them actually get back to the state as it was before this bad thing happened, and also talk about prevention, be partners to municipalities, to companies in explaining how to prevent these things to happen, because this is the best for everyone, right? When nothing happens, or when it happens, you're protected and you don't have any big damage. And back to the other part of your question, indeed, we've started in the association, thanks to the support of our members. We've started a very interesting project that consumes most of my time now, and we're trying to build a network of like senior care homes, because there is never enough of these homes, never enough of space for people who need not intensive but everyday care, and who cannot stay anymore within their families because the families cannot take good care of them. And this is another thing where this is a challenge, I think, that we're going to face, that not only we're experiencing climate change and extreme weather conditions, but at the same time we have our population that is aging, and elderly people are rather fragile, they're not very resilient. And I think that insurance companies are starting to realize that their role in the society is also to react on this, and not to just sit and wait, as you said, and then say, oh, people got old, what can we do for you? Now you're not insurable, whether you're too old or because you live in a flood zone, by the way. So we're trying to be preemptive, we're trying to prepare for this. Well, this project, I don't want to take too much time for it, but we're also doing it very green, and we also have very strong social values. We take care of the employees that are going to be working there. It's a huge experience, by the way, but it's not the only thing we do. The other thing we do, and I would like to stress out, is also we're trying to cooperate with the government on how to better prepare for the future relating to these weather conditions, to these extreme weather conditions, because we see now that some zones are completely uninsurable. So we don't want to leave those people behind. We don't want to sit and wait what's going to happen and whether the state is going to help them or not again. And we've entered conversations with the government saying we need to do a partnership to be able to overcome this gap, this insurance gap, because we cannot insure them and we cannot leave them behind. So let's think about some pool solution or some reinsurance solution, some guarantee scheme in order to help. So yeah, sorry to be maybe too long, but these were the main changes I've observed.
It's a very salient point, and if I may say so, the job is not done when you pay the claim, right? It's mostly about trying to restore the situation as close as possible to as it was before, or even better. And that you are doing also as an association with systemic risks such as flood. Is at the
and by the way, we're just also entered cooperation with the Czech Chamber of Architects on something that's called Build Back Better, and we're trying to, as you said, help people build back better, not so fragile, not so homes that are greener but also better protected against floods or anything else.
Thank you. I'd like to return to Ganna for a second. So you have 17 countries, UNIQA. You have 20,000 employees, give or take, and exclusive agents. And you also have about 17 million customers. And my question to you is, how do you integrate those values into the entire fabric of the company, as it were?
I believe that we are now very much connected, like across the whole group. We've also, and for me, all these are signs of building sustainable environment. Because if we look at sustainability at the origin of the word, then it's about endurance, resilience, as you say, and support. And I believe that maybe it's a little bit out of your question, but I will come back to it. I believe that it's really important at this stage that we build communities and we build groups of people and we start collaborating across conventional boundaries, like we are sitting here, we see a lot of people from different domains, but how much we can do together when we unite. And that's a big force. And it also creates sustainable business, sustainable environment in the company. And in our group, like for 2 years now, we have a new approach, way of working, which is called communities. So it's a community which is built across different countries, and people are working on some challenges. So it's not only like sharing best practice, it's also part of it. Learning together is part of it. But what is important, we have a real cases, and we also have ESG community where we have real cases, what we work on together. And then the countries implement it around for all of our customers and our different stakeholders. So for me, this is a great example how we can build on our strengths and make it happen. And also, if to speak about leadership, I think, and how the leaders could bring value forward. I was surprised by a figure, which is 88% of employees think that currently the companies are in need of moral leaders. Those who have the values, who share their values, who then walk the talk and also invite others to do it. And then through these different formats, like I just mentioned, people take the lead and then the leadership spreads across. And for me, there's a lot of power in it.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to check very quickly with Julian if we have time or if we don't. Where are we with that? We have a little bit more time. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. On behalf of the speakers as well. So, Helena, going back to you, you referenced the flood risk, which is affecting entire communities and goes beyond the remit of an individual policyholder and an individual insurance company, and how you're working across kind of the industry and the government as well to come to a solution. Is there anything else that you see at this point that the industry in Czechia should be thinking about or worrying about, also linking to the topic of values?
I don't want to speak about things that should worry us, maybe. No, but again, I really think that one thing is that we have to help adapt and become more resilient. It sounds so blunt when I say it, but really prepare for what is coming up and have the solutions before it happens, and be ready, not to be surprised every time. Okay, there is a huge. I mean, with these floods, for the whole market, I will give you the numbers for the whole market. We had nearly 100,000 claims. So just imagine when it happens all within 1 week, and then the insurance companies have to deal with 100,000 claims at the same time, and everybody is in a hurry and in a difficult situation and so on. So this is something that we've been learning also, how to react in these situations, and I'm really proud, I must say, of our members and of our member companies, how they dealt with it. And the second thing, I really believe that we need to work more and better with the government. It's also on the topic of aging and of more and more long-term care that's going to be needed. This is also why we've entered into this project. Not only we're building these senior care houses, but we've also helped push through a legislative change that facilitated insurance companies creating a new product for actually ensuring long-term care. Some of them are already creating the product or selling it, but we think that it shouldn't stop there. That's why we also went around the problem on the other side, and we're trying to increase the capacity of long-term care available here in the society. And it's actually back to the values. Maybe it's an extremely difficult project, but it makes so much sense. And if it didn't make so much sense, I would be quite angry that I have to invest so much energy into it. But because it makes so much sense to me, I'm very happy that I invest all my energy into it, because what we're trying to do are really beautiful places. We know we've partnered with an operator that already has homes, so we have seen what's happening in these homes and how life and energy actually flows in there, not just waiting, for the end. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to increase the capacity of good care, not just any care. And I think it's important to most people, as you said, they have to know that what they do makes sense, and then it's easier for them. They have to know why they do it, and it makes sense to them, and then they can, push through.
I will give maybe one example. We recently had the biggest surveys in Czech Republic and Slovakia about families, and there is data I remember from Slovakia. 85% of people believe that their family will take care of them during pension or some disability periods, and 70% believe they can make it. They can really care. Yeah, so it's a gap, but also such a big hope for each of us that we will be taken care of, and at home or in these facilities, but that really somebody cares when we are there. And for me, like your project, and we are part of it as well, happy to be there.
Thank you.
Yes, so that's actually walking the talk.
Yes.
Thank you very much, both, for your perspective. It is truly an amazing industry that we are part of in creating long-term value, and this is what we need to continue doing through what the companies do day in, day out, but also through ensuring the transition and applying those values into action, because as they say, if it's not insurable, it's usually not investable as well. So there's something there as well to add, as long as we keep those values alive and consistent now and in the future. So thank you very much. Thank you for the flexibility in terms of time to ISFC. Thank you to our speakers for sharing their perspective, and you can catch them later to continue this conversation. Please join me in showing your appreciation to the speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, and always really glad to provide more time for interesting discussions. And now as it is very much in line with the topic of this conference, we will try to do a very fast and effective transition between panels. So I actually kindly ask you to already join me, and I will introduce you. I do have a clicker, 1 second. Okay, so now we are starting a conversation with the audience, but we will start here. And please kindly join me on the stage. So we have Esmeralda Topuzi from UNIQA Sustainable Business Solutions, who is a business resilience advisor, and also you have already heard from Arko, Vervark from Tangelo. And I'm actually very excited about this conversation because we are trying to connect different worlds, not worlds necessarily, different components or elements of transition. And I want to link it to transition because that's where you ended, or what you ended on, Dimitrios. And I think essentially what we are discussing in most of the panels here is how can we make the transition to more sustainable, greener economy very effectively, and not just sustainable, but we can actually manage it well. And it's and I hope you would agree, that transformation is a process, right? It's a journey in a way. And that journey has different segments, different phases, there's different components in it. And here we would like to bridge the component of reporting and actually working with data, which comes also as one of the main phases there with telling the story of sustainability and actually communicating it, but also maybe one step before is resilience and managing risk, understanding risk, identifying risks. And we had a quick discussion about, okay, how are we going to bridge it? And or maybe instead of introducing you as such, we actually were discussing, because if you remember from the panel I moderated 2 hours ago, we had Marta from Allegro, and she already touched on the topic of, well, double materiality is very complicated, some of the complexities of ESG regulation, and also she mentioned how much time it took actually to go through this, through being in line exactly, or exercise, or essentially complying with ESRS and using the report. But also there's so much more, because double materiality is actually understanding those risks and being able to report on them. Now, let's actually use Allegro as an example. I'm conscious Marta is not here, unfortunately, because we want to provide some answers here. But can we use Allegro as an example of what are some of these, some of the work on resilience, and how in your job, day-to-day job, how do you actually work with companies to help them integrating and understanding climate risks?
Yes, I can say good evening, everyone. I think it was a long day. My name is Esmeralda Topuzi, and I'm really happy to be here. And especially, I think we had a very good intro from the colleagues before in the panel. You well said, transition to sustainability is a huge process, and I think the main process or the starting point is resilience. And I feel you, Helena, why you have to repeat many times resilience, but it is like that. And another panel also mentioned that yes, sustainability is expensive, but I believe that it's even more costly not to be resilient. And I can come to Allegro as an example to connect with the data and the reporting. Because also before going to reporting, I think we need to do another exercise. So really the basic meaning. I think she was frustrated. She has all the right, all of us maybe went through this exercise, and she was frustrated to deal with the data and to connect all the information together. It took time. Most of the processes are manual, but this was her pain point. Is this the pain point of her managers? We don't know. I can give you a very nice example from one on-site assessment of one of our senior risk engineers in oil and gas industry. Not happy to bring that industry here, but it's a valid point. I think he went there, he checked this high sophisticated company and he said, yes, I see the investment, you have done a lot, but I still think that your biggest risk is fire. And he was like, I trust not. And he said, no, then he started to give technical explanation. And he said, it's not that I don't agree. I agree, but the biggest risk for me is not to find oil and gas. Then I don't have what to sell. And then I'm just dead. So it's about business model. It's about how resilient is your business model. And I think the difficulty and the pain point that Marta had is that she had to do this exercise based on assumption because she cannot find the information, the realistic information, and she has to work manually based on assumption. So being resilient is doing the exercise based on real data and checking what really affects your core business. And this is the only way how sustainability experts together with risk managers have to work together, not just as compliance service inside the company. They need to build meaning out of this data. So to understand what is the vulnerability first and how to tackle this vulnerability before going to the opportunities of it. I don't want to step long into climate risk, which are big losses if we consider the data, and half of it are not insured. But they are more than climate. It's about systems, it's about cyber, it's about geopolitical and tariffs that might bring interruption. So without understanding where do we stand as a company first, we cannot say we take investments and actions on sustainability plans because something can come up, an event that maybe our risk models couldn't predict, and then you cannot go on with sustainability action plan that you had in place. So linking all the information together is the meaning to build resilience in order to be able to build sustainability.
Okay, that's actually really, really good point. And maybe quick disclaimer, because I'm conscious that Marta's not here. And to be honest, actually, Allegro are really doing an amazing job on sustainability integration, I think, and also reporting. But we are using it as an example. So it's also as a company. But on that note, because when I hear what you talk about, and this is even outside my expertise or the work I work on, with financial sector, we're talking about, as you said, climate risks, system risks. It actually goes beyond market and financial risks, although it's very closely connected. To me, that sounds like a lot of complicated data from a lot of different sources, right? Talking about all the way from meteorological, different temperature and so on. So working with data, I mean, to be honest, talking about ESG and ESG integration in practice, it really comes to data, right? And we are trying to bridge these two. And Arko, for example, here in this case, talking about Allegro as well, I know we discussed obviously CSRD and actually going by the reports, but I understand so from Tangelo as well that outcome or the output is to have a good quality, clear and usable financial or the annual report.
Yes. So we're talking about Allegro, but let's be clear, there are a lot of companies having a problem in there. So we can also say company X,
Let's do that.
We clearly heard her say that she has some challenges on building the reports. And that has to do with all the source data that you have to collect, but it's not only the data, you have to work with different departments, and I think it's important that you start working from one single source of truth. And that's where also automation and tools can help, because you're almost like the spider in the web. You have information coming from all places, and you need to create a report where it all comes together. That combined with the fact that CSRD is there for the first time, a lot of still is unclear what's meant exactly. I already mentioned in my presentation, if you look at the double materiality analysis, it can be up to 1,000 data points that you need to report on. So important, I think, is, and that's something we also do with our clients, is make the connection to the different source data. So that could be the source data that you build on and provide. But once you have a connection with an external data source, that connection is there, and you will connect it to all the tables. And if you've seen an annual report, there are a lot of tables in there. But if you have that connection in there, it's just a matter of pushing the button to synchronize, and you will get automatically all the data into in your reports. So you will always be sure that the data is correct and is up to date. It would save you a lot of time, because can you imagine, and probably some people can, because they're still doing that manually. If you have, one of our clients here in the Czech Republic, they have an annual report of 600 pages with even more tables maybe in there. If you want to do that manually, you know, you keep on working on there. It's very error prompts. You know, things can go wrong. Just copying it into a wrong cell, and then a week later you have an update on the data, and you have to do it all over again. So if you don't want to have your staff, like she mentioned on her staff, work very late on and have long nights, you know, start thinking about also automation in the process. A single source is, I think, a single source of truth can really help in that. But I think there are even other things also that we can touch on. And I heard from a previous presentation the types of connection that you can make. Of course, we can think about APIs and secure FTPs. I'm a little bit technical at the moment, sorry for that. But you would be surprised how many companies just still work with Excel. And that should also be a possibility to have those Excels connected to your final integrated annual reports. It just will help you and your colleagues, you know, to have a better secured reports. It will help you in being more efficient, and in the end, yeah, you will have a better process.
It is one of my favorite memes, where you see that the entire financial sector is still basically being founded on Excel. And I have actually experienced that in real time as well with some.
Well, you know, my wife is a CPA, so I should be careful what I say. But you know, they still do their magic in Excel. I would say.
But I mean, while that's, I mean, definitely happens, and I have seen also like fairly sophisticated investment funds like using Excel quite extensively. But I think one thing that really resonates, as you said, it's actually putting the right data together. And it's essentially the impact of that report as well, because especially, well, for the company you mentioned, I imagine that's probably a large company. If they can produce 600 pages, very likely maybe listed on the stock market, so probably also ESG rated by rating companies, right?
There's a logo of them over here, so
okay. Not important. Okay, no, but the point is that, you know, like actually what goes into the report, while it might, like, I don't think many of you here actually read the reports before you go to sleep. Well, I don't know. Hands up. Okay, Dimitrios. Okay. Which one do you like the most?
Well, the investors do.
And investors, exactly, but that's the thing. Like, it actually is being used, and the data is quite crucial when it comes to ESG ratings, which might actually decide on some of the capital allocation. But back to you, Esmeralda, because it's quite unique, I think, talking about resilience. We did talk about reporting a lot and ESG and so on, but this comes from slightly different risk perspective, which for insurance company is very relevant. I don't really work on this topic that much. We work a lot on DNSH and EU taxonomies. I think there's some overlap. But when you as an advisor work with different companies and also in the different countries and regions, I'm actually genuinely curious, what are some of the main, I don't want to say challenges, it's essentially some of the main blind spots people underestimate when it comes to climate risks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what unites us together is the data, and with Excel or a big sophisticated fancy system, someone has to pay. And if we focus on climate risks, I can say just in the last year, in 2024, the economic losses were more than 300 billion, and more than 300 cases happened, and half of it were insured, half go directly to customers. So they face this financial burden. And I think Arko was referring more to the companies, to the big companies who disclose. But actually the ones who are less insured are maybe the SMEs. Mm-hmm. And they are dumped from both sides. So one, from the climate impact to them, they are vulnerable. And from the other side, even though they don't have to disclose, but the big suppliers come and ask for data. In this sense, the vulnerability is high, and we make sure that using our information, our data as insurance, based on loss history, based on risk profile of a client, we have the necessary information to help that client build prevention. Because the work doesn't start, I think Dimitrios mentioned, when the loss event happens and when the claims gets paid, the work really should start before. Before the event happens, if the event happens, the companies need to make sure that they have enough capacities to withstand this event, and they have the people who will stay there after the event happens to recover the process. So we want to create, and we have started in UNIQA Sustainable Business Solution to create a small resilient ecosystem where the data are not enough. We need technical expertise on site to check those assets, to check the premises. We need, of course, to take into consideration not only internal risk, as it was before, just fire risk, property, asset damage, but also what comes from external. So climate, ESG, market demand. Sustainability doesn't mean only, let's take this initiative, it's nice to have, means review the materials you are using because the demand of the clients is going into that direction. So you will lose customers, you will lose market in the end. So it's a win-win situation. You be resilient to become sustainability, and then you create value.
So I personally, as someone who works with sustainability topics, I like what I'm hearing. But you mentioned SMEs. You also probably work with some clients, smaller clients. Some SMEs I have met, when you open any topic of resilience / climate risk, it's incredibly complex. It's not that easy to actually understand, to comprehend, and maybe to even convert or interpret into like a strategic decision. But I'm also very conscious that behind me we have a slide which says conservation of the audience, conversation with the audience, right? And I'm going to. This is a demonstration of me turning to you because so we do have person, Esmeralda, working on climate risk and actually advising companies on how to not even understand it, but maybe even potentially leverage it for competitiveness, managing it. And also Arko working with data and actually not only in terms of collection, processing data, but also using the right data and telling the right story. And there's many of you here working in different sectors, but I would bet not so much money, but a little bit, that many of you, I mean, it's too late, it's that you are involved in also these two phases, if not one of them, and like probably even both, right? So report preparation, working with data, but also understanding of the risks. So conversation with the audience, I'm not going to put people on the spot, but it would be interesting if anyone wants to comment on their experience, potentially ask the questions of experts we have on the stage. We do have a microphone, I believe. Anyone in the room?
Maybe to add also something,
Please.
because you mentioned climate data, which are actually the big elephant in the room, but it's not only about climate, it's about the whole risk that can affect. So it's geopolitical, it's cyber, it's everything that can cause disruption. It's also black swan events like COVID we had, that we couldn't predict it, but it's high improbable to happen, but the impact then is higher.
So let's actually, you go.
Well, and also look at from my perspective, we can also make it a little bit broader. So it's not only about CSRD, it's not only about those data points, but it's part of the integrated annual report. So we also have finance in there and other departments and other numbers that needs to be presented. So
it is. But how many? I'll make it easier. How many people here actually do work and are somehow involved with ESG reporting and actually putting some data together, or even I already saw some question. Okay, so that's actually many more than I thought. Okay, so there's obviously a couple of elements. One is putting the data together, but also understanding and choosing the right data, which I would hope big part of that is not only climate, as you said, it's resilience linked or focused data. So I would be quite curious to hear maybe some of your experience, how difficult that is to work with, or to maybe understanding climate risks and different resilience impacting risks on your company. Like, is it easy to navigate? Is it easy to put together and then report? What's the experience? Anyone? Or I can just throw the microphone and anyone catches it. Okay. But listen, so I think the consensus is that it's easy, and then everyone is pretty much ready.
It's I'm aware that it's not an easy topic because it is so interconnected. I just wanted to point out that yes, it's about in the end of regulation putting a push, but they have also to rethink their role, not just as a policy maker and just throw it in the market and leave the burden to the companies, but together with the policy incentives should come in order to make sustainable finance happening, because it's expensive as it's not scalable. So the more they come, then the more pressure you put on the price. So I think it's on every one of us, financial industry, to use our data, our expertise, and to guide them through building resilient models. It's also on the government, and all together we need to take this proactive, responsible leadership.
Good. Arko, you wanted to?
Yeah, so I think from the Allego example, I think we know that a lot of companies have issues in building these reports, and it takes so much time. And when we were talking about the SMEs, you just were talking about that. And in relation to that, I can't change the regulations, of course. So it might be that they even have a bigger need for the solutions that are out there, because they don't have the big fancy departments with many people trying to gather the information and calculate and doing the work to come up to the reports. So they might have people to do it on the side. So, but for the SMEs, it might be even a bigger challenge for them, where automation can help in.
It is, but that's the issue, right? Because the discussion is about SMEs essentially, because it's bigger companies and especially some large corporations, they do have different understanding of the impacts and they do have capacities. Question I saw. Yeah. Very good. Do you have a microphone? Yes.
My name is Ganna from KPMG, and I would like to ask two questions. Regarding the physical risks at the insurance sector, it's a bit hard to make forward-looking assessment because in a lot of models, usually there is a way of thinking that everything is unchanged, but we are in the situation where the whole environment is changing. So what is your opinion from that question? And the other side, for the insurance sector, which is always an interesting question, we are focusing on the environmental aspects and physical risk, how the insurance sector will manage that one, but it will have an effect on the social aspects. In several cases, the insurability of several exposures, like we think about wildfire in California, for example, it's very hard to insure, or drought risk in our region, for example, in Hungary. What is your opinion on that, how these environmental and social aspects can be solved at the same time? Thank you.
Yes. Actually, I'm starting with the LA example because I think that's also another good showcase that climate affects everyone, and it's a cost and a burden also for the wealthiest countries. So it's true that insurance is facing more claims and losses in the last period. That's why we need to rethink our business model, because some industries might be non-insurable, at least for the short term. The better we know the risks, the better we know the effects, of course this gap will be reduced. But in the short term, might be uninsurable, be either climate or cyber or whatever it is that we don't fully know. This is not a stopper, because in the end, the business interruption will follow under the client. And a client losing is a lose for the client, it's a lose for the insurance, for the banking, for the whole system. It's interconnected. So all these risks are interconnected, and we are operating under not the best circumstances. we have high inflation, we have high interest rate, volatility in the market, and there is no such capital that can pay you the loss, even the government. So there are resilience funds, but it's not possible with the frequency and the severity of these cases to be able to repay all the time. That's why it's important for all of us, be either financial industry or the corporate itself, the industry itself, to take measures on preparedness. Of course, it's a burden for them. That's why we need to work together with them, creating such resilience ecosystems. Us, with the technology, with the banking institution, they have the information about financial health, we have the information about operational risk and how losses are from the historic point of view. Let's unite the whole information in one single truth, point of truth, and use it, make use of it, and then we can deliver regulatory reporting that really makes sense and not, as you said in the morning, just to tick the box. I hope this answers your question.
I think so. No, I think that's actually a really good answer. I am conscious we ran out of time a little bit faster than expected, but I'm also, I would, for once in my life, would try to finish on time any of my panels. But it would be actually really nice to continue the discussion as well then over the break, because this is, especially for SMEs, I feel like they finally are somehow understanding the reporting, because there are tools, exactly as Tangelo, which can make it easier. But physical risks and some of these complexities in resilience, the suddenly is much more scientific, it's much more than just finance and business related. So I really encourage people to have that discussion on actual risks and physical risks. Good, well, thank you so much, Esmeralda, Arko. It was really nice talking to you.
Pleasure.
And we are going to, I'm probably moving over to Linda. Good, lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's interesting to see, I think it's fascinating to see, I mean, since I go to a lot of events, it's interesting to see that we're still sometimes a little bit stuck in the, we have no data or we have data issues, etc. It's also the capacity gap between large market actors who can afford to invest in more sophisticated and expensive solutions. So in some ways, we seem to be a little bit stuck. So it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But let's just hope that we're at least moving in the right direction. So on that note, I have the great pleasure to welcome the next speaker to the stage. So, welcome to the stage, Mr. Marek Mora, the Deputy Finance Minister of Czech Republic. Mr. Mora actually was the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank here. So it is fantastic to have him here with us in person, because currently he's also stepping in for the minister and sorting some other things out. And it's a very exciting time to actually have this conversation. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, Marek, we've had this conversation, similar one, 4 years ago in 2022. And back then we focused on climate. It was relatively new topic brought in by ECB, etc. So in your former role, we explored that. Now at the Ministry of Finance and also as an economist, which I think is even more interesting, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions to start with the competitiveness. This year's angle of the conversation is actually exploring the conversations and linking them up to the EU level. So what should be actually the priorities for the Czech Republic in terms of competitiveness? So we discussed earlier during the day that we are a little bit worried about a 2-speed Europe, and you know, we have an investment gap where maybe need to speed up investment because we want to reach a certain type of future, so we need to spend now. So my question is, what are those kind of key priorities we should be focusing on, to maintain prosperity and potentially outcompete others?
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon, everybody. There are 2 questions, I think, in one. One is what the Czech Republic should do, and one thing is what could Czechia contribute to avoid or this two-speed Europe, or maybe to improve our EU altogether. So let's start with Czechia itself. I think that we should continue, and now, sorry, I will be quite boring because, and you will see that I'm a former deputy governor and Minister of Finance guy. I think we should really continue concentrating ourselves on macroeconomic stability. If there is one thing in which Czechia has been historically very strong, it is really stable macroeconomic conditions, though of course in the last couple of years it was very difficult, but it was very difficult everywhere, not only in Czechia, but our inflation was very high. But I think we managed both inflation and we also managed to stabilize at least the increasing debt in terms of public finance. So this is something which is, I think, very, very important for any future business planning. I always said, and I think you can see it also in the data, that if you compare, I mean, Czechia is obviously not a tiger, economic tiger in Central Eastern Europe, but we have, our performance has not been so bad since the 1990s. And I think this macroeconomic stability was one key condition, and the second one was our geography, for which we are of course not responsible because we are where we are. We are very close to the EU, we are very close to Germany. So this is point number one. But point number two, and this is much more difficult, but I think even this macroeconomic stability is an issue which was traditionally something which was almost automatic, and it's not so automatic anymore, especially in the area of public finances. Which is much more difficult is any kind of microeconomic reforms or structural reforms. We obviously have a problem with housing. We obviously have a problem with research and development, education, and this kind of stuff. You know, historically, there have been many studies about Czechia, and many people have said that what we should do in Czechia to increase our competitiveness is to concentrate on 3 I's, and these I's was infrastructure, innovation, institutions. I say always that we should concentrate in Czechia only 1 I, which can be 3, which is institutions, because I think that not so high, I would say even poor quality of our institutions has a negative impact on infrastructure and on innovations. What I mean, we have a very atomized society. We have more than 6,000 municipalities, which is the highest number per capita in the EU and almost in the world. We have a very atomized, we have 6 international airports, Bavaria has 3. We have 27 public universities, Bavaria has 13. We have 54 institutes of our Academy of Sciences. 4 of them are, 3 or 4 of them are historic institutes. Do we need, you know, so many institutions, so many small places where we are playing our games, and I think this is something which we should change, but this is something which is very difficult to be done as well. So we should concentrate on this area, which I think this atomization of the Czech society has then consequences for the poor performance in our education, because the schools are created by municipalities or the high schools by regions. It has also consequences for our infrastructure, slow infrastructure building, because you have too many places which you have to ask each time, you know, for their permits, etc., etc. It has also consequences, in my view, for the high costs of housing, because our supply is not flexible enough. The length of issuing a construction permit is among the longest one, definitely the longest in the EU. And if you look at the world data, we are somewhere between Nigeria and, I don't know, Botswana, something like this. So no, but look at the countries. I don't want to now offend anyone, but this kind of countries, if you look at it's called Doing Business, the World Bank study, you will find it. So these are things on which we should concentrate, but it's politically very difficult. Now on your second question, what could be our contribution to the EU? Very difficult. Can we avoid a two-speed Europe? I don't know. Now, in which sense you mean two-speed? You mean two-speed Europe in terms of Europe getting divided, or institutionally, or in terms of West, East, or how do you mean it? Because
it's predominantly about essentially GDP growth, so slow down in one and picking up in others in terms of cheaper energy costs.
But you have seen that for many years or even decades, the area of, I would say, the northeast Europe was doing relatively well, southwest not so good. But in the recent years, you see exactly the opposite. You see quite a good pickup in economic performance in southeastern Europe, in Spain, quite well, also in Portugal. We do not see very strong performance in Germany, which is a bit surprising. So I don't know exactly which two speeds you mean, because it's relative, it's changing over time. Now we seem to have a bigger problem in Central Eastern Europe, especially in Germany, and we will see. And I don't know what the contribution of Czechia to this could be, apart from the, I would say, reform agenda, which I mentioned before. Everyone probably has now hopes to the new German government, but let's see. There again, I don't want to be too critical. My impression is that we concentrate too much on this spending in infrastructure, etc., in defense, but I see too little on this structural reform part.
That's a very good link to my next question, because structural reform essentially is linked massively to competitiveness. I'm glad you also brought up that index. We use it a lot about ease of doing business. We started an organization here ourselves. I nearly cried at some point at how many paper documents I had to sign, get my birth certificate. I was born in USSR, I'm that old. And then they said that, that's not a country. And I retorted back, well, Czechoslovakia is no longer a country either. So it just ended up really Kafkaesque bureaucratic struggle to establish a not-for-profit organization. So that was interesting, right? Because we actually have had those discussions that what we need to do is we really need in Europe some serious ease of doing business, so tax, etc., labor mobility. It's ridiculous that, we discussed with another international speaker, Dimitrios, that if you work in one EU country and then you move around throughout your career, it's almost a mezzanine to figure out how to get your pension, etc. So those are real competitiveness issues. And often they're more national than European. But let's not let the European Commission off the hook. It is the main regulatory body, and I mean, it loves regulation. And institutions are sticky. I like that you brought that up. So now there is this exploration of defense, potential joint defense funds, spending funds, trying to really spend money. To be fair, I would actually argue that Europe did underinvest, and it underinvested during a time when money was cheap. Now when money is more expensive, all of a sudden we're very active. But so for you, what would be the key pillars of European competitiveness? We did get the Draghi report, high expectations. It didn't really consider Central Eastern Europe, which actually did have the highest growth rates. It did identify wind, for example, as one where we can still potentially compete. So what would be if you were the European Commissioner and you actually had all the power, I know this is a thought experiment, what would be the sectors and things that you would focus on? So where do our strengths lie?
Yeah, well, it's an easy and at the same time quite a difficult question. I will tell you why it's, I think, difficult. I started working at the European Commission in the year 2003, so 1 year before the enlargement. At that time, I don't know if anyone will remember, very high on our agenda was so-called Lisbon agenda. It was basically the same thing which now Draghi, and it's not only Draghi, it's Letta, and it's Noyer on financial markets. So we have many, many reports. It's not that we would lack reports on what we should do. The problem is delivery. We are not able to deliver. We are not able to deliver in Czechia with digitization, our housing permits. We are not able to deliver in Europe. Why is it so? My answer is because, in my view, there is a hidden political demand for this regulation. People simply like what we have. And in my view, and sorry, because this is, I know it's not a good answer. For me, the underlying problem which we have in Europe is simply demography. Demography, and if it will not change, if we will not, rejuvenate ourselves, but how should we do it? Either we have to produce more children, which is not going to happen. You see that our fertility rate, a couple produces less than 2 children, 1.41 or something in Europe. It's a problem. No, it's a serious problem. We are getting old, we are aging, and we are rich at the same time. And in such a society, to expect flexibility, to expect innovation is very difficult. And if we don't manage this problem, then we will become more and more archaic, and we will simply lose our competitiveness. And this is, in my view, the most underlying problem which we have. And then we can talk about things like telecommunication markets, financial markets, energy markets, all these which you find in Letta and Draghi, etc., etc. But I think demography is key. Of course, as I say, no one has a good answer, because before, in many years ago, I also studied pension system, demography, etc. It's very difficult with any policy measures to sustainably increase the fertility rates. But what we could, of course, do, as the Americans are doing, is to have a kind of smart immigration policy. But with things which happened in the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, I think it will be very difficult. So sorry for not being able to give you any good answer, but I think we should talk about these underlying problems. And of course, all these, if we were able to, why are we not able to, let's say, integrate the telecommunication market? What is the problem there? I think energy market is more difficult because you have national choices for energy mix, and if you have 27 energy mixes, to integrate it into one market might be difficult. But telecommunication, why do we have 27? Why we have 004, 420 for Czechia and 421 for Slovakia? Why don't we create one thing for the European Union? Why is it so difficult? I don't know. I think that I know, because we have these telecommunication offices which try to protect their areas. But this is something, for me, this would be the kind of low-hanging fruit which we could do, but we are still not able to do it. So maybe it's a question for, I don't know, for really, I'm not a politician, I'm an economist. So sorry for not giving you any good answer.
It's a perfect answer, because we always argue that at the heart of any organization or country or any system is human. Right? Even the AI is created and currently run by humans, so we kind of embed our own biases and all sorts of approaches and belief systems into what we do. And you really see that in a lot of very static companies versus agile, how much actually leadership can shake up and change things. And it's a very good point that for innovation, it's a very interesting, I don't know how many people have followed and read latest research and things coming out about Japan. It's super interesting because for the first time ever, Japanese companies are starting to think, ooh, it's actually not bad if these people move around between companies, because innovation has stalled. Because people are there for a lifelong career, they're all aging, no in-migration, major issue with innovation. So they're afraid of losing that edge. So yes, demographics, I completely agree. I mean, I'm originally Latvian. We're dying out at a rapid speed, so bye-bye. It is a real problem. I mean, it's also very interesting to see, though, that at least some parts of the economy and some parts of business are actually now trying to fight the communications battle on migration. And where I come from, we're very anti-Russia for historical reasons. So the argument goes, we would rather have 10 people from Asia versus 2 Russians. So maybe that's a way how we can communicate. We can discuss that at a different panel, how horrible that is from some ways. So we all know that we have a very interesting time globally. Geopolitics is back with revenge. We're not going to massively dive into that, but as an economist and somebody who does a lot of thinking around also governance, etc., what would be your advice? And we have quite a good gang of senior leaders from Czech Republic, from Poland, etc., in the room and online. And what I want to ask would be, what is your personal and professional advice, how to navigate these times, and what are the kind of key risks to keep in mind? Because sometimes, it's some of the advice can be very professional. I actually had some interesting conversations across Europe where people are like, no, you just focus on this, this, and this is how you do it. Like, don't block the news in the morning so you don't get too depressed. Only read them in the evening. In terms of work, people are like, okay, well, never mind, just literally block out the negativity, etc., etc. And for risks, really, really be very careful about XYZ. If you're going to the US, make sure that you clear your accounts so there's no climate in the names, etc. So from practical to also just general thoughts on how do we mitigate the risk? And yeah, how do you think Europe will fare also geopolitically? And do you think that our relationship with the US will return to normal in a few years' time?
Well, a very important but very difficult question. To call this time interesting is a good understatement. I think I would use a different word, but I think we are really probably, well, we don't know where we are. I don't know where we are, if we are really in this kind of tectonic changes. But what is really surprising for me is this asymmetry of perception between our European importance for North America for us and their perception of importance of Europe for them. I thought it was more symmetric. I thought, for me, I could imagine that the United States, well, I thought that for the United States, the most important systematic contender is China. And if I really was to start this kind of battle, I would look for allies, and I would, but maybe it's probably it's completely wrong. I would think that for the Americans, the most natural ally would be the European Union. This would be my kind of global thinking, but obviously this is not the case. Most definitely not with this administration, maybe not even for the majority of the Americans. There I am less sure, but maybe not. And this is for me, comes as a big surprise. So if I would ask, I mean, my advice, if I really knew what to do, I would create myself a business and maybe make some money in this situation, because in this kind of situation also you could make money. My advice to companies and to financial sector would be simply keep calm and carry on and wait till the dust settles and maybe then see more clearly what's actually going on, because now we are living in, I think, very uncertain period with uncertain outcomes. It's not even clear to me if the US have a real plan or not. And I would advise definitely the companies to talk to each other and try to re-establish this transatlantic link. I don't know if you remember, was it 10 years ago? It was at the end of Obama administration, I think, when we tried, definitely on the European side, to create this what we call TTIP, Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, was it called, the abbreviation. That we really kind of wanted to have a stronger union. Well, I would not call it a customs union, but maybe going something in this direction. Then Obama didn't want it, and then it did not continue. Probably no way to get it back. But for me, really, it would be the most natural way if we look at the global competition, if our global challengers or contenders, then I would say that we should really try to stick to the United States. If we get split, which maybe is going now on and which is maybe happening, but I don't know, maybe it's a kind of temporary period and maybe we will re-establish it. Then we are in a very difficult situation, because I don't know who will be our closer ally in the EU. As I said, we are an aging, old continent, rich one, not the most flexible one. And then I think we will be in a very difficult situation. So again, I basically did not answer to your question. I know it, but I don't know the answer.
No, it's essentially, I don't think that anybody, unless you are lying, I do love these futurologists. If you ever follow that kind of work, it's very funny because they just predict with great certainty, and then they always have an excuse why it didn't happen. So I think let's better just stay calm, assess the situation, and it might be a blip, it might be a tectonic shift, but at the same time, I think when you talk to the US stakeholders, the one thing that, of course, they are really worried about is the essentially systemic erosion of essentially governance. Because if you have such polarization of the population and you can't have a political consensus even on anything and everything's in disarray, then of course the governance nightmares that we only did dream up academically now are actually playing out. Maybe we'll learn and we'll shift back, but let's see.
But if I may add one thing, we have been talking, this I avoided in one of the previous questions, what could be done, and one of the answers, what we should do in Europe is, this capital markets union, and now called investment and savings union. But for the capital markets, and there are many advantages of it, of course, we know all know it. But I think the biggest advantage for me, which I learned about with the US experience, is not so much that you have, better allocation of resources, etc., innovative businesses. But for me, is actually the developed capital market, I hope, could avoid to avoid some of the extreme political solutions, because I think in the end it was the capital market which somehow brought back a bit of discipline to the governance in the US. And this is for me a big, big advantage, and I hope they will have the power to do so. They will not allow politicians to go to a complete extremes, or at least if they did, they will then have to pay big costs, which I think is a big advantage. And even for these reasons, maybe we should do something about it in the EU as well.
Wonderful. I actually love that we end on Capital Markets Union. I think I've been listening to that discussion for over 15 years, and it's always, we're going to solve it this year. Let's see. But yeah, great point about also capital markets and the fluctuations of the stock exchange actually does matter. Money is mobile, so I think this is an interesting thing to watch, and maybe that will be the one thing keeping the US administration at least in check. With that, we are out of time, but thank you so much for making space in your busy agenda. I'm just about aware how busy it is, so it's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I thank you as well. Marek, Mora, and Linda, thanks. And now we are conscious of the time, and I'm again on the stage, by the way, which I really don't want to do for that much longer. But I think it's at any of the 3 days, it's really nice to wrap up and maybe just do some conclusion, and then we can move to the third day. As you all notice, each day has slightly different topic. The idea is these topics or the focus of days are interconnected. But instead of me just saying things, I wanted to bring someone to help me wrap up the day. So I have Katka Španíková from Raiffeisen Bank. And I'll pass over to you, but I just wanted to say, because I think you probably all of you will have your own wrap-up, right? I mean, we all heard the same information. Everyone is processing it differently. Probably you can apply it to your sector, to your work, and I do hope so. And for me personally, I'll just give you mine, and I'm very curious what you have heard or maybe what resonated the most. It's really interesting because we've been doing this for 5 years, and so I see how the discussion is developing, and I think I said it before, it's originally probably was expected to go like this. It's not exactly the case. It's been all over the place. But it's interesting to see how we are still talking about the regulation a lot, right? But luckily, I think there's still more and more discussions on the strategic element. And I see that shift. I think it's very important. I think it's also under different pressures now from financial institutions and how transition finance, transition risk, and this forward-looking assessment is coming into place, because for banks it's really important to understand the risk long term. And while I still feel, this is my impression now, after the second day, we are still essentially talking about how the regulation is changing, all the data we need to report. And I do really think and hope we also do realize, and I see that more and more, that it is certain reality we work in. There's still EU Green Deal happening. There's all this regulation in some kind of form through different pressure points still exists. It's focused on transparency. Let's work with that. Let's live in this reality, but let's also start looking at the strategy, how to take advantage of it, right? So that means what is exactly the business strategy and what part of business or investment strategy is the decarbonization strategy, and put it together. So I starting to see that more and more, and there are actually some good examples here from Poland as well, from Czechia. So I'm very excited about that. How about you?
Well, for me, I feel some depression this year here. As Linda mentioned, we are a little bit stuck, but it's just stop the clock. And my two key inputs from today was communication and strategy. The first one is communication, and I really liked the presentation of Eva Bucheva, who highlighted that we need to explain what is sustainability about to the people, to normal people, not here in this room, because we all are in our green bubbles, but go outside and explain sustainability, because if people understand, they will support it. And Arko Vervark mentioned another important topic, and this is that we need really effective infrastructure for this communication. We are still communicating sustainability in two heavy words, two heavy topics. But mainly here in the CE region, we are in the middle of all these disinformations, and much of them is going towards sustainability. We need to communicate what is the topic about. We need to do it effectively and in a very simple way. That's the first thing. And the second thing for me today is strategy. The last panel on the morning highlighted several important topics, but the key for me is that we need to integrate regions. And again, this is key and crucial thing in the CE region. And we need to set up clear and strong strategy and then act. And this will help us, even if we are stuck at the moment and going the two-step back, the strategy will help us to go in the right direction. And I really like the two business cases we saw at the afternoon, Allegro as well as Panattoni, which show us that in very different industries, the long-term strategy matters. And the long-term strategy is helping us to create value for the future, not only for today.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a really good, I think, summary of some of the key messages. And as I said, I mean, I'm actually very keen on hearing your messages, maybe over coffee or wine. I'm very hopeful as well. In terms of what you mentioned in, for example, regions, SMEs. Because I'm very conscious as the organizer of organizing this bubble as well. But always what we try to do at ISFC, even here, and I really hope you agree, it's not only in terms of the countries we are trying to mix, CE, but also bring some experts and people, some leaders from, let's say, the UK and some all over Europe. And it's exactly the point, same as bringing some academics. And this is something I have heard from a senior banker here as well. It was really excited to speak to professors. And this doesn't happen often, to be honest. I go to conferences as well, and it's actually really interesting for me as well to do that, or maybe to speak to people from completely different sectors, because we are, for example, sometimes very much focused on finance. So I think that's one element, but then exactly to what you said, I'm just going to quote you, go out and speak to SMEs. So let's do that. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have had a good time, you have learned something, you have met some interesting people, because that's exactly what it's about. And we hope to see you either tomorrow, or then you can watch online. So have a nice evening. Thanks. Okay.